The movie tells the story of a mysterious virus that strikes Korea, causing chaos and turmoil throughout the country because the people infected by it turn into zombies. We see the struggle of a father who tries to care for and protect his daughter, who also turns into a zombie, so that the army doesn't hunt her down and kill her. Our movie today is My Daughter is a Zombie 2025. Let's begin. The story starts with a man named Lee who returns home and finds his daughter, Soba, has become a zombie. Strangely, he wasn't surprised at all. He was very calm. Even when Soba tried to attack him, he remained composed. But let's go back in time a bit. Before these events happened, and before the zombie virus hit the country, Lee worked at a zoo, and his daughter Soba was a student who loved K-pop songs and had a Shirazi cat named Yoonji. At that time, she was busy watching breaking news on TV showing infected citizens attacking the streets of Seoul as the strange virus spread very quickly and caused panic. That day, they were celebrating Soba's 15th birthday simply, and the cat, whose nickname was also Ginger Rat, was not interested at all because there was no fish on the Suddenly, they heard a commotion outside, and when they looked, they discovered their neighbor was dancing a romantic head dance in broad daylight. But they didn't realize it was a zombie attack. Eventually, something truly terrifying happened, and it turned out that what was happening wasn't a romantic dance or anything like that. This scared them and made them hide inside as the zombie approached, craving fresh blood. He tried to break the window, and Lee was very annoyed because it would be a hassle to clean the house. He said he would call the police, but the zombie woman didn't care and kept trying to get inside. So, they had to escape immediately before getting infected with the zombie virus. When they went out to the street, they discovered the situation was not easy at all because the whole area was full of zombies of all shapes and colors. Zombies on scooters, grandpa zombies, and even a Chihuahua zombie. Lee came up with a plan to go to his mother's house in the village and pretended to be a zombie with his daughter so they wouldn't be a target for the other zombies, to the extent that they looked like they had eaten rabid snails. But unfortunately, all the zombies realized they weren't part of the group, so they had to run quickly. But Soba fell, and the grandma zombie prepared herself to bite her. Lee sacrificed his hand, but luckily the grandma zombie had dentures, so Lee wasn't bitten, and they had to leave the area immediately. After that, Lee stole a car, and it wasn't easy at all because all the zombies tried to catch them. In the end, they managed to escape in the stolen car, but it turned out Soba was infected, because while waiting for Lee to steal the car, some zombie kids bit her. Lee tried to calm her and told her maybe the hospital could treat her, but the virus started spreading in her body, and we see Soba gradually losing consciousness and turning into a zombie. She started attacking him to the point the car crashed into the barrier middle of the road. He tried to calm the situation without hurting his daughter. That night, their grandmother Kim arrived home, and Lee was waiting. He tried to lie and tell her Soba was just sick, which made Kim very worried and tried to see her granddaughter in the room. But she saw a terrifying sight because Soba had fully turned into a zombie and tried to attack her suddenly with supernatural ability, like in The Matrix. Kim controlled the situation after Lee told her everything that happened. Kim was very sad when she saw Soba had turned into a zombie. Afterwards, they saw on the TV news that the government had closed all the streets and put military guards, doing everything possible to prevent the mysterious virus from spreading, and that the army would execute anyone infected. Their words turned out to be true because the next day when Lee went to the hospital for more information, he found the situation there very chaotic. The zombies started raging and attacking anyone, so the army arrived and infected people on the spot. When Lee saw this, he had to leave immediately before they found Soba. Later at home, Kim saw on TV that the government was warning people to report immediately if they found anyone infected with the virus. Lee decided to dig in the ground to bury his daughter himself instead of letting the army execute, saying, "I'll do it myself, it's better," and apologized to her, saying he had to do this. But when he came to kill her, his heart wouldn't let him, so he apologized and cried, saying he couldn't be a good father. When Kim saw this, she got very angry and tried to kill Soba herself since Lee couldn't. The two started fighting because Lee thought maybe a hospital could find a cure and bring Soba back to normal. Suddenly, the cat Ginger Rat alerted them that Soba had escaped. Without wasting time, they ran after her quickly before she attacked the villagers. Finally, they found Soba in an old warehouse. Lee remembered the reason she went into the warehouse was that when she was little, she loved playing there with her mother. which meant she might still have memories as a human. Lee tried playing Soba's favorite songs and saw a response from her, proving the girl still had human consciousness and hadn't fully turned into a zombie. That night, scientists finally determined that the infectious disease was caused by a virus called GI. This virus destroys soft tissue and leaves only instincts like zombies, but it's not like the zombies in the game Plants vs. Zombies who eat brain. The research team discovered that stimulating the brain cortex of rats infected with the GI virus restored memory and weakened the virus. Back to Kim, she tried making rice with eggs, hoping Soba would eat normal food, but the attempt failed, and it turned out she preferred eating. Suddenly, Lee's childhood friend, Joe, arrived to visit after she had returned to the village. Joe asked about Soba, and although they tried to lie, realized she had turned into a zombie. Joe, thinking the village was in danger, tried to call the police, but Lee stopped him and explained that Soba was still living with human consciousness and even showed him videos to prove it. He said he was now trying to stimulate Soba's memory to weaken the GI virus by training her. Joe rejected this idea because the situation would be very dangerous to spread the virus in the village and said it was better to follow government instructions before a disaster happened. But the next day, Joe was waiting for Lee to tell him that his relatives who worked in pharmaceutical companies had finished animal trials and would submit a request to use the medicine in emergency cases. Joe also agreed to help train Soba until the treatment developed. To start the training, they took Soba to an abandoned island. The first test was training her not to bite, and the situation became comedic when Soba chased Joe because he looked like a pig in her eyes. In the next exercise, Lee ordered Soba to blink, and even the cat Yunji did it easily. Then they used a whistle as a signal for Soba to stop attacking. Day after day, tirelessly, they trained Soba, and good progress began to show, and they wrote notes according to the training history at the same time. At that time, the government succeeded in reducing the number of new infections and even offered a reward of 100 million to anyone who reported an infected person. Day after day, they continued the training so that Sue could become a normal person again until the development of the medicine was completed. Time passed, and now Sue was able to understand what she was supposed to do and what not to do. Lee trained her on simple phrases like saying "Papa," but it was never easy and took longer than expected, while Youngie the cat was showing off and making it seem very easy for Kim advised Lee to go to the city to buy makeup for Sue, but while he was there, he met his childhood friend who found out where he was even though he was trying to hide. Shin wasn't expecting Lee to be back in the village, and she was a teacher at Yunbong Middle School. That meeting was like a reunion for them both. Lee told her he was now living with Kim and his daughter, Chin. When Shin heard that, she was surprised that Lee got married and said she wanted to meet Sue, but Lee refused and asked her to get out of the car, even though Kim's house was still far away. It turned out that Shin was Lee's first love, and that Joe was the one who invited her to meet up, because the three of them were childhood friends in the village. Shin heard from Joe that Lee returned to the village because he was fired from his job, and that Sue was being treated for a brain problem. So she offered Lee that Sue could study at her school, but Lee refused and lied, saying that Sue was learning at home. After that, the news about the zombie virus was over. Suddenly, Shin said she hated zombies very much because when her fiancé got infected, she had to kill him with her own hand, and she said she wouldn't let that happen to anyone else. Lee remembered that Shin was a professional judo player and had won many awards. At that time, Sue was interested in the cosplay festival on T that was going to be held in Osselin, and Lee wanted to take Sue to the festival and look for an outfit for her, but he found an old document about Sue and started hallucinating, imagining that Sue was still a normal person who talked like before and even called him Papa, but unfortunately, all that happy came just a dream, and he cried that. Lee explained to Joe that he wanted to take Sue to the festival in the hope that her memory would return. At first, Joe didn't agree because Sue had never been to a crowded place before, but after Lee pleaded, Joe agreed to go with them. The surprise was that Shin had gone to Kim's house, and suddenly Sue woke up, maybe wanting to go to the bathroom. Shin tried to approach her, quickly pushed Sue into the room, which made Shin suspect something strange. Lee and Kim pretended to act so that Shin would leave the house, and he told her he didn't want her to come here again. The next morning, Kim started using the makeup that Lee bought to make Sue look less like a zombie, and Youngie the cat was sitting next to her, while Joe was dressed as the character Thor in cosplay, with his belly showing. Finally, Kim finished her task, and Sue came out with beautiful makeup that made her look not like a zombie at all. And now they were getting ready to go to the carnival party. After that, Kim went to attend an event in the village because their village Ombang, received a certificate of appreciation for becoming the safest village with no virus attacks. The surprise was that the village chief asked Kim about Sue after hearing from Shin that the girl didn't go to school and that in the village, all children must go to school. Kim got confused by the question and left immediately, but the chief stopped her and asked where she was going. The party hadn't started yet. Finally, the seniors' party began, and they proved to be the kings of the party with their craziness, because age is just a number. Then we go to Oakland at the time of the carnival party. They were enjoying the beautiful night, and nothing bad happened because Lee was sure that Sue was perfectly fine and wouldn't attack like a zombie. Joe received good news that the GE virus medicine would be available soon, so the hope that Sue would return to being a normal person became real, which made Lee very happy. But without them noticing, Sue disappeared. The two were very shocked and started searching for her everywhere. It turned out that Sue was attracted by the smell of food there, and even though someone bumped into her, Sue didn't get angry and kept walking, looking for something delicious, which turned out to be churros. The seller ran after her because she didn't pay, but luckily they found her, and Lee apologized and paid for the food. The surprise was that Sue said the word churros, which shocked them both because Sue hadn't spoken at all before. Lee was very happy and said he would buy all the churros the man had, and the seller was surprised by what was happening. Back in the village, Kim got home. He found Shin waiting for her and already knew everything about Sue from the notes Lee had been writing. In the end, Kim explained everything to her, and it turned out that Lee was not her real father, but Sue was the daughter of Lee's sister, Jongjian, who had died at that time. Jongjian always fought with her husband over money, so she returned to Kim's house. And since then, Lee always played with little Sue. But one day Jongjian died in an accident. Lee was very sad, and since then, he became Sue's father, while her real father took all of Jongjian's insurance money and went to start a new family alone. When they returned home, Shin tried to attack Sue because she was still convinced that the girl was very dangerous. Of course, Lee tried to protect her and calm Sue, who wanted to attack. When Shin saw that, she was surprised because she understood what Lee was saying. They made an agreement. If Sue was really safe and could think, then she had to go to school as proof that Lee was telling the truth. But if he refused, Shin would call the police against him. Lee agreed to the deal, and from that day, Sue started going to school. Shin explained to all the students that Sue had difficulty speaking, but on her first day, they tried to bother her while she was silent. Luckily, Lee was there and tried to fix the situation, even though what he did was very silly because his contact lens moved in the corner of his eye. Even when they were playing basketball, Sue tried to participate, but unfortunately, Shin, who was still affected by the zombie thing, threw the ball hard, and Sue fell on her face in a funny way, so Lee took her to the clinic immediately, and Joe worked hard to fix Sue's face. Finally, after several attempts, Joe succeeded in the task. Shin apologized on behalf of the kids, and it was clear that they were very interested in Sue, even though her appearance was strange. That night, Kim and Sue played cards and were both happy with the game. Even the cat didn't care. Suddenly, Sue's real father arrived, and his name was Hansen. Hansen showed them that many people were looking for Sue because during the cosplay carnival, someone filmed a video of her, and she became a trend. Kim couldn't do anything but surrender when Hansen tried to kidnap Sue to get the 100 million. When Lee received the news that Sue had been kidnapped by Hansen, he ran after him and stopped his car, even though it was very dangerous. Lee was very angry and hit Hansen, and they started fighting. When Sue saw Lee being beaten brutally, she got angry and attacked Hansen and bit him like a zombie. Lee shouted at Sue because she made a deadly mistake by biting a human, and thus Hansen started to turn into a zombie, so Lee had to kill Hansen. After that, this incident is why Lee and Sue decided to leave the village, because he didn't want to cause more trouble there. Although Joe didn't agree because he was worried that Sue would be executed and Lee would be imprisoned, Lee was sure it was the right decision. Kim also decided to go with them, along with the cat. Before they left, Lee asked Kim to help him and give a message to Shin, but they saw army forces heading to the village because they had tracked Sue's location. When Shin opened the message, she discovered that Lee's goal was to keep Kim, Shin, and Joe away from the problem because he knew the army would arrest Sue soon, and he decided to take responsibility alone. Currently, Kim's house is full of army forces, and the commander is asking Kim about their whereabouts. Lee had planned to take Sue to the deserted island and live there, but they were delayed because the army arrived and surrounded the area. The two of them immediately hid in the warehouse and started trying to negotiate. Lee explained everything about Sue, that she still has human memories, is not dangerous, doesn't bite anyone, and can even speak. Lee begged them not to kill his daughter and said he was ready to open the door, but the army doesn't negotiate with criminals in their eyes. When Lee saw this, he couldn't do anything but surrender and apologize to Sue for not being able to protect her. He gave her one last mission, to bite him. Of course, Sue refused, but Lee explained that this was the only way they could go to heaven together. So Sue bit Lee, even though it was wrong because she did something she was forbidden to do from the beginning. Finally, the army managed to enter and shot Lee, who began to turn into a zombie. They stopped shooting when Sue started crying and calling out, "Papa." 3 months after the incident, we see Sue waking up in the hospital, having recovered from the GI virus, which made Kim, Shin, and Joe very happy. After that, Kim took Sue to see Lee, who was being treated and was in a coma. Scientists discovered GI virus antibodies in Lee's blood that could be the key to developing a cure, which increased hope. They explained that they analyzed Lee's blood in detail and found neutralizing antibodies, meaning Lee could heal his body from infection after Sue bit him. It turned out this happened because Sue had been causing Lee minor injuries repeatedly due to their daily interaction over a long period, during which Sue was gradually recovering. This stimulated an immune response, or we could say it acted like a vaccine, and that's what made Sue return to normal. Then Kim gave Sue Lee's notebook that he used during training, like when Sue played with Young Ji, with her grandmother, and even when she bit things. On the last page, Lee wrote, "Whether Sue recovers or not, she will always be my daughter, and we will always be happy forever." Time passed, and they were still waiting for Lee to wake up, but the cat, Yang Shin, played a video for Sue of her in a dance competition, even though Lee was in a coma, and the surprise was that Lee heard the music and started moving his finger. And that's the end of the movie. See you in a new summary, and thank you for watching.